Erik Bacharach covers the Titans for the Tennessean, and he joins us now. Erik, what's the latest with the game this weekend between the Titans and the Bills?
Dan, I think everything is very much firmly up in the air at this point. I think everything is on the table. I still think that a forfeit is probably unlikely. There's a few reasons for that. Number one, it costs everyone money. It costs the NFL. It costs, not only the Titans, but the Bills players, their game checks would be void if that were to happen. It's unfair to the Steelers, I think. Does that game, the game that got rescheduled last week, does that game also become forfeit now that, this upcoming game has been forfeit? So there's a lot of sort of ripple effects that come into play with that. I don't think, as we stand here now, there's any way that the game gets played as scheduled Sunday noon. Just, again, with another positive test this morning, the Titans have had 23 since September 24. 8 of the last 10 days, they've returned at least one positive test. So right now, I don't think there's any way that game gets played as scheduled on Sunday.
Is the NFL in town investigating the Titans?
Yes, they've been in town since Friday, since last Friday, investigating the Titans. That investigation, as of this morning, to my knowledge, is ongoing. Obviously, they were looking into the incident that kind of came to light yesterday, first reported by Paul Kaharski about the Titans meeting at a private school in the Nashville area. It was about 15 players. That was on September 30th, last Wednesday, which would have been a day after the team facility closed, and the outbreak first came to light. 8 positive tests the day before those players met. And I just had a leak source confirm that the Titans were informed that day that in-person activities were prohibited. Them and the Vikings were both told that. So fines, potential draft pick losses, penalties are coming. Those are coming down the pipeline at some point. Whether or not the NFL finds more. Again, that's only one instance that the NFL is looking into. All of that kind of remains to be seen, and we'll see if that leads to a forfeit. To me, again, that eventuality seems unlikely.
Do we know, are there marquee players who have tested positive or may be held out of this game if they played? I know, we're not a HIPAA laws and all of those things, but I don't know. At first it was a long snapper, and it felt like it was a backup and people in the, management. But I don't know. How deep does this go with that roster? Has anybody found out?
Yeah, so every day the Titans are required to place the players that tested positive on the COVID-19 list. So that happens every afternoon around 3:30 or 4:30 Eastern. So to this point, there's been 5 starters, including the 2 top defensive linemen, Jeffrey Simmons, Daquan Jones. Yesterday, Corey Davis, their number 2 receiver, was placed on the COVID-19 list for a positive test. They also have Adam Humphries and Bo Brinkley, the long snapper, would also be included in that list of starters. So that's obviously substantial, but any way you slice it, taking 13 players away from a team, which to this point is the list, there's no way to go into a game and kind of just be prepared with that many guys missing. We spoke with Mike Vrabel earlier this week, and he indicated that, the only way to make this work from a numbers standpoint is to get practice squad players involved on game day. So, even if this, let's say the game is pushed back to Monday or Tuesday, which would, cause a ripple effect with the Bills scheduled game for next Thursday against the Chiefs, you would still think that most, if not all of those players are still absent. And, that would be a severe handicap on the Titans for sure.
Yeah, but also, what it's doing to these other teams. I think the NFL's got to look at this and say, all right, we're going to let the Titans dodge a bullet. We'll reschedule the game with the Steelers now this time around. And if there's a possible impact on, other teams here, I think, the NFL's got to crack down pretty hard on the Titans here. And that's why I wouldn't be surprised there's a forfeit, just to say we don't want to have a situation happen like baseball where the Marlins went willy-nilly, and the Cardinals did too, and nearly shut down the season for a while. So I don't know. I think that you're in some dangerous territory here when it comes to the impact on these other teams that have, done it the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, Dan, if you go back to the Saturday before the Titans' Week 3 game against the Vikings, that's when Shane Bowen the outside linebackers coach who's kind of been a de facto defensive coordinator for the Titans this year. They don't have a defensive coordinator by title. That's when he first tested positive. And, he's the outside linebackers coach, again, de facto defensive coordinator. He's, in the mix with a lot of players, a lot of team personnel. He was the only one that didn't travel with the team to Minnesota that game. So you would think, with contact tracing and all that, some players maybe should have stayed back to avoid this, to prevent, the spread of the spread any further. We've seen that the Vikings return no positive tests, which is good. But again, it kind of just goes back to contact tracing, the incubation period for this thing, which, the CDC says is 14 days, which, we're coming up on that now. Theoretically, the next couple of days, we could also see a few more positive tests. So I just think any way you slice it, it's a total nightmare scenario for the Titans and the NFL.
Erik, great stuff. We appreciate you joining us, and we'll keep an eye on what you're reporting. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
And that's Erik Bacharach. He covers the Titans for the Tennessean.